Hey guys, how's it going? And this is Simon, and this is the first of what will be 4 videos that I'm creating to help you prepare for Test 2 in the UNIX security course at Mohawk College. Now, more specifically regarding this video, what I'm going to be doing today is working on Module 3, which is all about secure remote access, which is this guy right here. So I guess I'll start off with a bit of an introduction. The reason why I'm making these videos is to essentially help you with the test that's coming up, like I said, but it's also to show you when everything is done correctly, how these labs should play out. I have a couple students that I tutor at Mohawk College, and they asked if I can make videos to help them study, and I thought it was a really cool idea. So I did ask, and I got permission to make the videos. Hopefully, if you are struggling with any of these labs, these videos will help. What I'm going to be doing is I will go through the entire lab with you. The only thing that I'm not going to do is I won't be able to give you answers to questions that you have to submit to your teachers for any kind of grade. So if you have questions about something you're getting marked on, please go see your teachers. And remember, your teachers are going to be more knowledgeable about the content of this course than I will be. And they're going to give you reliable and up-to-date information, and they're always happy to help. So if you do have questions, make sure you go see them. But if you have questions about this video itself, if you want me to clarify anything I've said or done, by all means, leave me a comment. If there's any way that I can help, I'd be happy to do so. So leave me a comment and I'll get back to you. Having said that, let's get into Lab 3. So what I'm going to do is click on this link right here that says Lab 3 to load this page, and I'm just going to minimize the browser for now because the first thing that we need to do is make sure that we have VirtualBox Manager prepared for the lab. So this is something that you should already know how to do because this is Lab 3, but just in case you don't, I'm going to guide you through this. What we want to do first is make sure that the VirtualBox Manager has the DHCP server option not enabled. So we do not want the DHCP server enabled at all, and I'll show you how I do it with my version of VirtualBox Manager. So I go to File, and I'll go to Host Network Manager, and I get this big window that pops up, and I'll bring it over here, and I just make sure that this section right here where it says DHCP server is not enabled. Now, depending on your version of VirtualBox, it may not look like this. It might be a smaller window. You might have something that looks like this down here where you have the 2 tabs, an adapter tab and a DHCP server tab. So just click on that tab and make sure it's not enabled in there as well. It might be in a completely different location because the layouts always seem to change, but just essentially find this option and make sure DHCP server is not enabled. And when you've made sure of that, go ahead and close the window. The next step is to go into the task manager, and what we're looking for is something that says VirtualBox DHCP, and if you find that, end the task. So scroll through your list and look for something, like I said, that says VirtualBox DHCP, and if you do find something that looks like that, just end the task and that should be sufficient. If you see something that says VirtualBox Interface or VirtualBox Manager, that's okay, you can keep it. The only one that we want to make sure we end the task for is something that will specifically say VirtualBox DHCP. If you find that, end the task and go ahead and close the task manager window. And finally, what we need to do is make sure that the VirtualBox host-only adapter has the right IP address and subnet information, because what we're going to be doing is using PuTTY. And we're going to use PuTTY because we're going to do some copying and pasting. We're going to open a couple windows in the same virtual machine. So PuTTY is going to be really useful in this lab, and we have to make sure that we can connect to those virtual machines using PuTTY. And that means that we have to make sure that that adapter has the right IP address and right subnet mask. So just go into your adapter options. Click on this guy, and right now I only have one host-only network adapter, so this is the only one I need, but if you have multiple, just make sure you're choosing the one that you're going to use for this lab, and right-click on it, go to Properties, click on Internet Protocol version 4, go to Properties, and then make sure your window looks like this. You want an IP address of 10.1.1.1, and you want a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, and once it looks like this, you can close these windows and you're ready to go. Okay, so now go ahead and load up your build server. Now my build server is the one that I completed in Lab 2. If you don't have that, you only have one that you created for Lab 1, that's okay. You can use the Lab 1 build server or Lab 2. As long as it's working, that's all that matters. My Kickstart file might look a little different than yours, but again, that's okay. If you have Lab 1 done, that's all you need. That's the minimum requirements essentially, and I will show you everything that you need to do with yours to get Lab 3 working. So once you have that, go ahead and start that. I'm going to start mine. And just while it's loading, I'm going to go through the overview of the lab. So go ahead and bring up that browser again and scroll down to overview. So with this overview, what we can see is we have our build server, which we've already built. We're going to tweak it a bit, but essentially we don't have to do much with this right now. We are going to be creating 3 virtual machines, and one is going to be called Yoda, one's going to be called Luke, and one's going to be called Vader. Yoda is going to have an IP address of 10.1.1.10, Luke will have an IP address of 10.1.1.11, and Vader will have 10.1.1.12. So that's what we're going to be creating, but we also have some other requirements for these virtual machines before we create them. So we'll scroll down to part A where it says build servers, and these are the other requirements. We have to make sure that they have 2 regular users, Alice and Bob, on every server, and that they have passwords. Then we're going to make sure that the firewall is configured to allow only SSH access, and we're going to modify the host file so that each of these virtual machines can speak to each other more easily using their host names. So all of these steps can easily be done, and we can actually do them starting down here where it says slick fast strategy steps. So go ahead and scroll down to there, because that's where we're going to start to do everything and build these servers. So go down here, and once you're ready, go ahead, click on your build server, and sign in as root. Okay, so I'm ready to go, and what we're going to do is part 1, which says configure DHCPD to always give Luke, Yoda, and Vader the correct IP address and host names. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the VI editor and edit this file right here, which is a file that we created in Lab 1, so it should be familiar to you. So if you want, go ahead and open up the file in the VI editor. So we'll say vi/etc/DHCP/DHCPD.conf. Hit enter, and that's okay. Go all the way down to the bottom, hit I, and what we're going to do is we're going to be putting what's called a host block at the very bottom of this file. So this is what your host block looks like, and I'll explain what this host block is going to do. What it's essentially going to do is when the Pixie boot starts for your virtual machines that you're going to be putting here for Luke, Vader, and Yoda, it's going to look at the MAC address, and if the MAC address matches this in the host block, it's going to say, okay, I'm going to assign it this IP address, and I'm going to assign it this host name. So what we have to make sure is that this part right here where it says hardware Ethernet, which is essentially the MAC address, this MAC address has to match whatever we put in to our virtual machine. So there's a couple ways that you can do it. I'm going to show you probably the easiest way to do it. So we're going to hit new, and we're going to make, let's say, Luke, because that's the first one. Go ahead and select Linux and Red Hat 64-bit, and then all of these default options are fine. So hit next, create, next, create. If you want, you can set up the settings, because we're going to be in here anyway, so you can go to system, get your boot order to be the way it should be. You don't need floppy, so you can get rid of that, but it should start with hard disk and then network and then optical. You can add a processor if you like, but we're going to go down to network. Change the attached to so that it says host only adapter. Make sure it's the right adapter that you want. I only have one, so that's sufficient. Hit the drop down menu for advanced and make sure the adapter type says fast3. And then this is where we have our MAC address. So we want to make sure whatever it says in here matches this. So instead of writing this, you might want to write this. If you don't like this number for whatever reason, you can, refresh this all you want. If you want to make your own, that's fine as well. What I find is I like to make my own just because it'll be easier for me to remember if I ever need to down the road. So you'll see that the 080027 never change. When I refresh this, it's always the same for 6 characters. So what I like to do is I'd like to change the last 6 characters to something I will remember like this, AA. So I know that it sounds silly, but you're going to see that when I say OK, I'm going to change this address to that. And when I do Vader and when I do Yoda, I'm going to do something similar. For Vader, I'll do BB, and then for Yoda, I'll say CC, which you'll see when I do this. That way, I don't have to make these virtual machines while I'm doing this, and then I don't have to go back to this file if I don't need to. So let's build this host block, and you'll see what I mean. You don't have to put it in the comments if you don't want to. We're just going to be putting the host block for each of these virtual machines. So I'm going to get this guy back up here. And the first thing we're going to do is say host space Luke curly brackets. The first thing is to say option host dash name, and in quotes we're going to say Luke and semicolon. Next option will be hardware Ethernet, and you're going to put in the address. So for myself, I have to make sure it matches my virtual machine. So my virtual machine was 08:00:27:AA semicolon. And then right here, what we're going to do is put in the IP address, which is fixed address, and Luke is 10.1.1.11 semicolon. And that's it. So we're going to do the same thing for Vader, and we're going to do the same thing for Yoda. So I'm going to say host Vader and put in his information. Once again, I haven't actually created the virtual machines just yet. So technically, I don't know what the MAC address would be, and that's why I like to just make something that I will remember so I can change it very easily, and that's why I'm making 08:00:27:BB::BB::BB. You can do whatever you want. Like I said, you can use what's given to you, whatever makes you feel more comfortable, but I'm just trying to show you that you can basically do whatever you want in this step for these labs. And Vader has an IP address of 10.1.1.12. And finally, we're going to say host Yoda. So 08:00:27 CC. And Yoda actually has 10.1.1.10. So just so you know, when you've created something that looks like this and you're happy with it and the spelling looks right, go ahead and save it, quit if you want. You can also force that. Now, once you've done this, don't forget to restart the DHCP service. So how you're going to do that is you're going to say service DHCPD restart. You should get 2 OKs, and that means everything's good to go. There's no problem with your file. And once you've done that, we can move on to step 2. So in step 2, what we're going to do is create PXE files for Luke, Yoda, and Vader. So the very first step is just go into this directory. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll just clear this. I'm going to say cd, and it is var/lib/tftp boot/pxelinux.cfg. Hit enter. And we're now in that directory. So what I'm going to do is type in the ls command and hit enter. And I can see I only have one file called default. Now in this lab, we actually want a new file called lab03. So all I'm going to do is copy default and make a new file called lab03, which is basically an exact replica of default. We're just going to tweak lab3 a little bit. So go ahead and do that right now. Just copy default and call the new file lab_03, all small characters. Hit enter. And just to make sure everything went well, I'm going to type ls, and we can see now we have 2 files. So that's perfect. The next thing we're going to do is right here it says we're going to point Yoda to the correct config. And it gives us a note, and it says this, which is hex characters, is essentially the IP address in hex. And he gives you this. He says, try get host IP, the IP address. So this might be useful on your test. You don't have to do it for this lab because he is giving you the hex characters that you're going to need for each of these, but you might not have that on your actual test. Your test might say 10.1.1.40. So it won't be 10, 11, or 12, and you're going to have to figure out the hex yourself. So let's just look at how get host IP works. All you have to type in is get host IP and your IP address. So I'm going to say 10.1.1.10, hit enter, and we can see we get this output, and at the very end we get some hex characters. If I look at this, it's the exact same hex characters as this. It is 0A01010A. So get host IP might be useful for your test. So just remember how to use it. It's very, very easy to use. But like I said, for this lab, we're just going to copy what he has here for these 3 lines. And the only real difference between these hex characters is this one has an A at the end, this one has a B at the end, this one has a C. So this can be done really, really quickly. We're going to say ln-s lab underscore 3 and then 0A 01 01 0A. Hit enter. Hit the up arrow. Just change the A to a B. Hit the up arrow, change the B to a C. And we are done step 2. So let's go down to step 3, and it says customize the new config file we just created, which is the lab3 file, so that it points to a new kickstart file. So we haven't created this kickstart file yet. You're going to see when we go into this, it's actually going to say default.ks because that is the original kickstart file we created, something that was called default.ks. We're going to be creating a new one later on, but we have to make sure that we prepare this in advance. So what we're going to do is go into this file using the VI editor. So say VI lab3. And there's 2 things that you might want to do here. There's one you definitely have to do, but there's another option. If you see here, it looks a little different. He puts a little bit of text here. You don't have to put this text in exactly the way he put it in. You just want to do something that stands out as this is a different file from the default file. So what I do is I hit insert, obviously, and I go down to this section, and all this is doing is basically putting a comment. It's just displaying this information on the screen when your virtual machine boots up and it gets into the Pixie boot. You're going to see something that looks like this. So just do something that you can recognize as being different from default, which is the first file. So what I do is I just write lab3, maybe some exclamation marks, and what that will do is when it does boot up, if you don't see lab3, you know it's using the wrong file for this lab. If you see the lab3 section right here, you're going to be like, okay, I know it's using the right file, it's pointing to the right kickstart, so I should be good at least at this step. So you don't have to do this, like I said. It's not going to impact whether it is technically going to the right kickstart file. It's just kind of a good indication that it is working. But the next step is something you have to do. And it's like I said, there's a kickstart equal or ks equals link right here. And as you can see, I said it says default.ks. We're going to change default to say lab underscore 03.ks. Again, we haven't created this yet, but we are going to do that. So once you've done that, you've modified this link, we're going to escape. Make sure you save it. So WQ, if you want, you can force it. So right quit, and you are done part 3 or step 3. So let's move down to step 4. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating that lab underscore 03 kickstart file. So first thing we're going to do is let's just kind of get into this directory. So I'm just going to clear this. We'll say cd /var /www /html /kickstart. Once again, if I type in the ls command and hit enter, we can see we do have a default.ks file, but we don't have the lab file yet. So let's just copy this default.ks file and make lab03.ks. So copy default.ks lab underscore 03.ks and hit enter. And now we have 2 files, but they're the exact same, so we're going to have to edit this file right here, lab underscore 03. So go ahead and go into the VI editor and edit that file. So on this page, this is step 4, we have to do 3 things, but for myself, I'm going to have to add an extra step. So the very first step I'm going to do isn't actually on here. It's to get rid of this host name because we want the host name to be Luke, Vader, and Yoda. We don't want a host name of SO1, so there's no point in having this section right here. So I'm just going to get rid of it. So I'm going to hit I to insert, go to this line. If you have a host name, just get rid of it. If you don't, then you don't have to do this step. Alright, so now we can do the very first thing that it asks us, which is to change the firewall settings so it's only SSH that's enabled. So go down to the middle of your file or your document. You're going to eventually see something that looks like this. So if you see something that says skipbacks, just above it says firewall enabled, and I have a bunch of things enabled. So I'm going to get rid of HTTP, I'm going to get rid of SMTP, and I only want SSH. So go ahead and get rid of anything that doesn't say SSH. and it should look like this. If it does, you've done the first thing, and we can move on to the next. The next thing is to add users. Now it says just add a user named Alice, but we also have to add Bob, so technically we're going to be doing 2 users, and it's going to look like this. So where you can place this is just under the skip X if you want. So just enter, and under the skip X I'm just going to put user space dash dash name equals Alice, and then dash dash groups equal wheel, and then dash dash password equal user pass is fine. And let's do the same thing for Bob. And if you're wondering what groups wheel is, it's essentially a group that gets a little bit basically elevated permissions, a few elevated permissions that normal users don't get. It was used to basically give users like a pseudo command ability, but you don't have to worry too much about that in this lab, I don't believe. So once we've done this, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the next step. So make sure your users look like this. If they do, you're good to go. The next thing is to modify the host file. So I just put this at the very end of the file. It's up to you. If you want to put it just before the hack to disable the UV devices or UDEV's device, whatever, you can put it there if you want. Whatever you want, as long as it's closer to the end of the file, you want to make sure it's near the bottom. We're going to hit, I'm just going to put some spaces there, and I'll even put a comment just so I know this is what I'm doing. I'm going to say configuring host file, and we're going to say echo in quotes 10.1.1.10 space Yoda, and then make sure you're appending it. Don't redirect it. Don't just put one of these. Make sure it's definitely 2, and you're going to say /etc/hosts, and do that for every single host that we're going to be creating. So 10.1.1.11, which will be Luke, append 12 for Vader, and then if you want you can put one in for BO1, which is 10.1.1.20. You don't have to, but I like doing it. And when you're done and you're happy with everything, it looks like it's all spelled correctly, go ahead and save that and quit. So now that we've done this, let's create our virtual machines. So let's open up the manager. We already have Luke here, so what we can do is just test to make sure that Luke is working properly, and if it is, then we can probably make the other 2, but if it isn't, then we can go back and modify whatever we have messed up on. So I'm going to hit start, and we'll cross our fingers that everything goes well. We'll just hit cancel. And what you can see is right here, see this lab 3? This indicates to me that we're using the right file and it's going to the right kickstart file, because the default file for that Pixie linux.config lab03 file basically did not have the lab3 with the exclamation marks. That is only exclusively in the lab03 file, so I know that it's doing the right thing. And it looks like it's loading, so I'm pretty confident everything is working correctly. So I'm going to minimize this and create the other 2 virtual machines and get them ready as well. So let's go new. We're going to say Vader. Again, all the default options are fine. We'll say Yoda. Edit those settings, so we don't need floppy. Make sure network's there. Make your boot order look like this. You can add a processor if you'd like. Go to network, make sure it's host only, make sure it is fast3, and make sure MAC address matches. So remember when I did the file, I don't have the file up, but I made something that I'll easily remember. So I kept the first 6 characters, and for Vader I had BB, BB, BB. So now I know what it is. I'm good to go. I'll click OK. And I'll start it, click cancel, and I'll just make sure over here that it's working, and I'll go to Yoda. I can see lab 3 there, so it looks like it picked up the right file. So when I go to Yoda, same thing, get this all ready. For my MAC address, I knew that I put it in as CC, hit OK, and start this. Perfect. So all three of them grab the right file. It should be good to go. So I'm just going to minimize these guys right here, minimize the VirtualBox Manager, and I have my BO1 right here. I'll minimize that. Let's just look at Luke, because that one should be done by now. Yep. So I can see right now Luke is our host name, but what we want to do is we're going to move on to part B because we've done everything in part A. It says check our work. This one is actually important. I know it's easy to say I'm just not going to do it because it takes a long time, but you actually want to do this if you want to make sure that part C works properly, and I'll explain why. What we're going to be doing in part C is Vader's going to jump in the middle and do a man-in-the-middle attack, which means we're going to unplug Yoda's network cable and change Vader's IP to Yoda's IP address. And then we're going to SSH from Luke to Yoda as Alice, and we want to see this really ugly error message. And it will only show up if Luke has SSH'd to Yoda as Alice before and got the correct Yoda. Because what will happen is it's going to create a file called known hosts, and it's going to put the fingerprint of the actual Yoda in there. So it's going to say, I recognize this computer as this with this fingerprint. But what will happen is when Vader takes over and you SSH into technically Vader when you're trying to get into Yoda, Luke, who's the one trying to get into Yoda, is going to recognize the fingerprint seems off. Everything seems off, and it should give you this error message. But if you don't do this, if you just skip this step and you never go SSH into Yoda before, it won't actually make a difference. It's not going to give you any error message because it's never known the Yoda host with the fingerprint ever. So I'll show you what we're going to have to do, and I'll show you what it should look like, and if it looks like that, you did well. But basically, we want to check that Alice and Bob can sign in. We're going to check the hostname and ifconfig file to make sure the IP address and the hostname is right, and then we're going to SSH into each of these guys. So it might take a little bit of time, but we'll try to do this as quick as possible. So with Luke, I'm going to say Alice, user pass. That worked. I'm going to say hostname. We can see Luke. We're going to say ifconfig, and we can see it's 10.1.1 and 0.11, which is good for Luke. And I'm going to say SSH Alice at Vader. It's going to give us this, which is fine. See how it gives us a fingerprint? That's fine. Just say yes. And then put in user pass. That worked, so we can exit. Now we'll do the same thing, SSH Alice at Yoda. Say yes, user pass. And that worked. So we can exit. Now let's sign in as Bob. Do the same thing. We just have to do the SSH commands now. So we'll do Vader. Yes. User pass. Perfect. Exit. SSH. Bob at Yoda. Yes. We're going to do user pass. And that worked. So everything works for Luke. And what I would suggest is exit out of everything until you get the screen again, just so that you're not stuck in a virtual machine and you didn't SSH into something that you don't want to stay in. I had that error when I did the first time. I was still stuck in Yoda and I didn't realize, and I did all these things that was supposed to be done on Luke, and it all went into Yoda. Yeah. So just do this until the next step. Alright, so let's get into Vader. So Vader's here. It looks like everything is well. We're going to say Alice, user pass. There we go. And hostname, Vader. That's good. Ifconfig should be .12, which it is. So that's good. And we're going to say SSH Alice at Luke. Yes. User pass. Perfect. Exit. SSH Alice at Yoda. Yes. User pass. Perfect. Exit, log in as Bob, and SSH Bob at Luke. Yes. Perfect. There we go. And one more time, but this time we're going to do it for Yoda, and then we can finally move to the man-in-the-middle attack. So Yoda, I'm going to say Alice, user pass, host name, ifconfig. Perfect. This is 0.10, which is great. So now we're going to say SSH Alice at Luke. Yes, user pass. Perfect. Exit SSH Alice at Vader. Yes, user pass. That worked. So let's exit, Bob, and same thing. Okay, so they're all good. We're going to exit, make sure that they are all like this. I'll exit out of this one too. See, this is what I was talking about. See how I'm Vader? I'm still in Yoda. So if I assumed I was in Vader, I would have probably done a lot of steps that I shouldn't have. So make sure you exit out of everything. And there we go. Okay, so now we can move on to the next step. So it says man in the middle attack, and I already kind of explained what we're going to do here. So it says make sure that SSH is working for Alice when you're going to get SSH from Luke to Yoda. We already did that. If you want, you can do it again just to make sure that everything is good, but it should be good if you've already done it. So there we go. Perfect. So I'll exit that. So now I'm Alice at Luke, which is where I want to be, and we're going to jump down here where it says unplug Yoda's network cable. So that's the step that we're on right now. So I'm going to go to Yoda right here. Just go to devices, network settings, and change your attached to not attached. Click OK, and you can minimize this window for now. Now we're going to grab a Vader's IP address, and we're going to change it to what Yoda had, which is 10.1.1.10. So, bring this guy over here and log in as root. Now this is something that you're going to have to remember from, oh, I forgot my password, from UNIX administration. I'm going to show you, just in case you have to do this on the test, how you can get the instructions to change the IP address. So let's just go into eLearn and go to UNIX administration. Mine's right here. And it's lab 3, which is basically system identity and network basics or something like that. Let me just see. System identity and basic networking. That's it. So click on this third lab in Unix administration and go to the lab, and it's near the bottom. If we go down, you're going to find a section that looks like this. This is what we want to do. We want to edit this file, and we're going to put in something that looks like this. We're just going to make sure the IP address is actually 10.1.1.10. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't need this, but I'll show you how it's done. So we're doing this on Vader, not Luke. So let's just grab Vader. Here's Vader. We're going to go into the VI editor and edit /etc/sysconfig/network-scripts/if config-eth0 and hit enter. And you're going to see it's already populated with stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is hit I to insert and change boot proto to none. We're going to make a static IP address. And we can get rid of the NM controlled and hardware address. So you can get rid of those guys. On boot, we'll leave as yes. And then we're going to say IP adder equals 10.1.1.10. And we're going to say netmask equals 255.255.255.0. And when you're happy with this, when the file looks like this, go ahead and save it and quit. Now to make sure that this is working properly, we have to restart the network service. So just say service network restart, and it will linger. So it's lingering right now, but it won't take too long. All of a sudden you'll see it say OK, and we're back here. And just to make sure everything is working the way we want, we're going to say if config, and now look at our IP address. It says 10.1.1.10. We want that. So now that Vader has this IP address, we're doing the next step, which is we're going to SSH from Luke to Yoda as Alice, and we're going to pay attention to this message that is basically going to be, like I said, this massive error message. So let's just clear this, and we're going to say SSH Alice at Yoda and hit enter. Look at that. Warning, remote host identification has changed. It is possible that someone is doing something nasty. And look, it says the fingerprint for the RSA key sent by the remote host is this. So it's different than what it originally was when we signed in as Alice onto Yoda the first time. So once it recognizes something's different, it's giving this error, and it says we're not going to be able to log into this. So that is what we want to see. That's the only thing that part C is really trying to show you. So once you see this, you're good to go. We'll just do this, which is return Vader's IP address to 12 and plug Yoda's network cable back in. So I'm going to go back into Vader, and we'll go back into that file. You don't have to remember what you put in before. Just change the 10 to a 12 here. We can keep it as a static IP for now. That's not a problem at all. So put this back to 12, but everything else can stay the same. Save, quit, and restart your network services. So service network restart. Once again, it's going to linger. That's okay. Say if config, make sure you're all back to normal. We can see now we're at 12, so that's perfect. We can minimize this. And let's go back to Yoda. Make sure that we put his network adapter back in. So go to device network settings and put it back to host only adapter and hit OK. Alright, perfect. If you want, you can sign in as Alice. You can put the password in and say if config, and we should see that they are 10 still, so that should be good. And just to make sure, let's make sure on Luke that we can sign back in. So I'm going to say SSH Alice at Yoda and hit enter, and it's going to linger. It's going to basically do nothing for a bit, and that's okay. Basically, that's probably a good sign. It's saying, oh, it's back. Maybe I'll let it go through, and look at that. Now I can sign in to Yoda. So we're all good. We did this successfully, and now we can move on to part D, which is SSH without passwords, guarding against brute force attacks. So I'm just going to exit this guy. I think it's going to ask us to make sure that we can sign in as Bob as well. So let's just exit, sign in as Bob, and one more time. Whoop, I messed that one up. One more time. SSH Bob at Yoda, and it looks like that should work. Good. So if that works, exit, and we're going to exit and sign into Alice again. So what we're going to do is this. This is the step we're on now because I've just made sure that Alice and Bob can sign into Yoda from Luke. So we're on this step, and what it's going to ask us to do is log in as Alice, which I already have, and we're going to follow the steps in the above tutorial. So the tutorial is going to show you how to generate a key pair, put the public key in the correct spot on Yoda, and then we're going to try SSH from Luke to Yoda. So here's the tutorial right here. Go ahead and open a new tab. It looks like a lot of information. Essentially what we're going to do is start here. We're just going to grab this guy, bring it all the way down, and say, okay, this is the part that we're actually going to look at, and I'll show you how it's done. We're going to do this for both Alice and Bob on Luke. The difference between the two of them is that Alice is going to have a passphrase. So it says right here that Alice will protect her private key with a passphrase and Bob will not. So what this tutorial is going to do is we're going to create a private key and a public key. Luke is going to keep the private key of Alice and Bob. The public key is what we're going to be giving to Yoda, and we're going to be putting it into a folder on the home drive that is called, or a directory that's called .ssh, and we're going to be putting it into a file called authorized_keys. So I'm going to show you all this, so don't worry if you don't understand this just yet. But before we do that, we have to create the private key and the public key. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to start here, and we're going to type in this command for Alice, which is ssh.keygen -t for type, and we're going to use RSA. So that's what I'm just going to put in right here. ssh/keygen -t RSA. Hit enter, and where it says enter file to save, enter the file in which to save the key. That's fine. Just hit enter. We want that directory, so that's perfect. And then it says enter passphrase. What I want you to do is don't enter user pass. Use something else because I want to make a point later on down the actual tutorial or this video. So I'm going to type in Simon. And I'm just going to reconfirm that it's Simon. And there we go. Everything was created. Let me just make this video or window a little bit bigger. So let's do this. Type in ls home directory /.ssh and hit enter. We can see that we now have a couple files. So we have id_RSA. That is our private key. So we're going to leave that here and we're not going to touch that. Then we have id_RSA.pub, and that's our public key, and that is what we're going to be giving to Yoda. And then we have known hosts, and this is what I kind of talked about before. This is why we got the error message, is that the SSH command, when we tried to get into Yoda as Alice, recognized that the fingerprint was different than what it was when we originally did it. So you don't really have to know this. It's just kind of a cool little piece of information. But what we want to take away from all this is the public key. We want this guy, and we want to put this guy onto Yoda. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to scp that file. So it's home directory /.ssh /id_rsa.pub. Make sure it's the public key. And we're going to put that in the home directory of Alice. So we're going to say Alice at Yoda :/home/Alice, and that's sufficient for now. Hit enter, user pass, and it got sent over to Yoda. So let's go to Yoda. And what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to get you to go into PuTTY. Okay, but let's just make sure that that file's there first. So let's just clear this. Let's say ls, the home directory, and we can see on our home directory we have id_rsa.pub. So what I'm going to do is open up PuTTY, and I'll explain to you why. We're going to be copying and pasting the contents of this. Some people will just rename this to this down here, authorized_keys. But the reason why you don't want to do that is that authorized keys is a file where you're going to put all your public keys. So you can put tons of public keys in this file, not just one. So if you keep on just changing, you just rename this file to authorized keys, you could be potentially deleting a lot of public keys. You want to make sure that we're going to copy the contents and paste it into this file that we're going to create, and that way if you do have a lot of public keys down the road, you can put them in and you're not worried about losing any public keys. But that's why PuTTY is going to be important. We need to make sure we can copy and paste. So go ahead and load up PuTTY. We're going to say 10.1.1.10, hit OK, and if you get an error message or anything like that, just say yes. It's not an error message, it's a security message. But log in as Alice and put in the password. And what we're going to do is this. We are going to cat in the home directory that file. Highlight it and just right click with your mouse, because it will automatically copy and paste, but it does keep the copy in memory. So we're just going to right click. It does paste it. We don't want that, so to get rid of all of this, but it's still there. We can still paste if we right click again, and that is what we want, because we're going to be creating this authorized key file or keys file. Alright, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to say vi home directory /.ssh, and we're going to create authorized keys. So it has to look like this. See down here? That's what we want. So make sure it's called authorized_keys and hit enter. There's nothing in there because we're creating this file from scratch. We're going to hit I for insert and then just right click. There we go. It's all been pasted in there. Now we can save it and close. And before this is going to work properly, what we need to do is change the permission of the file and change the permissions of the directory itself. So that's going to be really important, and that's what's hinted right here in step 4. It says hint, SSH is picky about the permissions on the home directory.ssh directory and the home directory.ssh directory for the file authorized keys. Only the owner can have write permission. So these are very, very specific permissions that you have to put on each of these files or directories. And I'll show you what you have to make sure the permissions are set to. So we are going to go and let me just clear this. We'll start with the file itself. So we're going to say chmod, and the permissions are going to be 644 and then that directory name, so, or the file name, sorry. So home alice.ssh authorized keys. So what that's going to do is obviously that's going to give us read-write permissions as the owner, but everyone else will only have read permissions. Now we have to change the permissions of the folder.ssh itself, or the directory. So we're going to say chmod and we're going to say 755 for home alice.ssh. So hit enter and that will give owner everything. Read, write, execute, and everyone else will only have read and execute for this directory. So if you do these two things, everything should work for Alice now, and we're going to test that. So the next step is, once we've done all of these guys, is to try SSH, and we'll just try SSH from utilota to prove the point. So I'm going to clear this. We're going to say SSH Alice at Yoda. I'm in Luke right now, so we're going to SSH into Yoda as Alice. I'm going to hit enter, and look at this. It says enter passphrase. So if I type in user pass, which is my password for Alice, and hit enter, that's not going to work. I have to put in the passphrase. So I wanted to show you that so you can see it's not the same thing. We're not asking for the password. We're asking for the passphrase for that public key that we created. So mine was Simon, so I'm going to type in Simon, and now I'm logged in. So that's all you had to do for this section. We're going to do the same thing for Bob. The only difference for Bob is we're not going to put a passphrase, and we'll see how that turns out. So let's go into Luke. We'll exit and exit, go into Bob, and just repeat these steps. So I'm just going to do it really quickly so you can see, but I'm going to say SSH -keygen -t and then RSA. Hit enter. That's fine. Just hit enter. We can leave it blank. We don't want a passphrase, so we're going to leave it blank. We're going to hit enter. We're just going to confirm we don't want anything, so hit enter, and they are now created. So if I just look into this directory, we can see we have our files. We want to give the public key to Luke, but we're going to be giving it to the Bob home directory. So I'm going to scp that file. Again, make sure it's the public key. And we'll go to Bob at Yoda, home Bob. See how it's asking for a password? This is the actual password, user pass. So it got sent, so let's go back to Yoda. And what I'll do is open up a new putty session. So 10.1.1.10, and Bob, user pass. Let's just look at this directory. We have the file, so that's perfect. Cat that file, highlight it all, right click. You don't want any of this stuff. At least we have it in memory though. And we're going to create the new file authorized keys in Bob's .ssh directory. Okay, so I'm just going to clear this. So we're going to say vi home directory .ssh directory, and it's called authorized _keys. Hit I to insert, right click to paste, save it and quit. Change the permissions 644. Change permissions of the directory to 755. We should be good to go. Let's test it. Here's Luke, so I'm just going to clear this. SSH Bob at Yoda, hit enter, and look at that. Didn't ask me for a password or a passphrase because we didn't have one. It just logged me in. So everything is good, and we are now halfway through part D. So now it says, does SSH still work with passwords? Log into Vader and SSH to Yoda as Alice. So let's just do that. Vader's right here. Let's just clear this. And we're going to say SSH Alice at Yoda. Hit enter. And there we go. Say yes. And it's going to say, yeah, just give me the password for Alice and I'll let you in. So it still works. We don't want this. So what we're going to do is, this is now done. We're now going to do this step, which is turn off password-based SSH authentication on Yoda. So we're going to edit this file in the VI editor. It's etc ssh sshd_config. And what we're going to do is change the password authentication to no. You are going to see the challenge response authentication is already set to no, so that's okay. So let's minimize Vader. Actually, let's exit, make sure he's not in Yoda. Let's go into Yoda. And let's go into root. So let's exit this, root, put your password in for root, VI editor, and we're going to go into that file. And it's a big file, so you're going to have to find the spots that you're looking for, and there's an easy way of doing it if you want. You can put question mark and then just put in password authentication, enter, and it'll take you right to the section that you need to go. Usually, did I not do it properly, or oh, it has a one right there, so we can do it again. Alright, let's just go down. Sorry about that. Alright, it should be right here. So you see, I don't know if you can see this, you're going to see a section that says to disable tunneled clear text passwords, change to no here. So right here where it says password authentication yes, we're going to change that to a no. So hit I, and we're going to say no. And like I told you, right down here you're going to see challenge response authentication no. It's already no, so we don't have to even change that. And we are going to escape, save it, and that is good. Let's just make sure we restart the service. So we're going to say service SSHD restart. There we go. And now it's going to say, does SSH still work with passwords? We're going to log on to Vader as root and SSH to Yoda as Alice. So let's go back to Vader. And we'll say root, admin pass for myself, and then I'm going to say SSH Alice at Yoda, enter, and permission denied. I'm not allowed to do that. So that is really, really good. So there's another thing that we can do too. This is part E. This is where we're on right now. It says, it's common policy to disallow remote access to root to force administrators to log in under their own account and then SU to root or to use sudo. This falls under the security of allow no shared accounts. So what we're going to do is modify that same file that we just did, and we are going to try to find a section that, or a setting that does not allow root to be used. So let's get into Yoda again. Let's clear this and let's see if we can find it. So it does say you can man sshd underscore config. I know the setting, so I'm just going to show it to you, but let's just hit enter and let's see if we can find it. I'll do my best to find it, but sometimes there it is. You're going to find something that says right here, permit root login yes. What we're going to do is we're going to say no. So what I'm going to do is hit I for insert, get rid of that comment, and change this to no. And then save. And once again, you want to restart the service. So you're going to say service SSHD restart, and there you go. If you want, you can do man SSHD underscore config, and there's a lot of options here, and it will tell you what we're supposed to do. Let's see if I can find it really quickly. There we go. So it says permit root login. So it specifies whether root can log in. The argument must be yes without password, force commands only, or no. The default is yes. So that's why we had to uncomment it and change it to no. We wanted to make sure that it does not have the ability. So that's where I found the information, just in case you're looking for it on the test. But of course, you'll probably have access to all this stuff on your test like we normally do. So hopefully you'll be able to find it very, very quickly. So I'm just going to exit this, and now we can, let's just exit. We can move on to, we're going to go to part H. Part G is part of something that you're going to get marked on. So it's going to ask you to log in on Luke as Alice, and it's going to say, what do all these commands do? So I'm not going to answer that for you. I'm going to let you guys do that on your own, but it should be pretty easy to do. But again, if you have questions, make sure you talk to your teachers. But we're going to skip the step. We're going to just go to part H, which is SSH tunneling, and we're going to basically go through all of this. So I won't explain all of this. Here's a little tutorial. You can open this link in here, and you can look at this if you want. What I'm going to do is just go through this lab, and we're just going to follow the instructions. We're going to install Apache on Yoda. So he gives you the command just in case you forgot how to do it. I believe in my Kickstarter file I already have Apache on here. So let me just take a look. I'm going to say root admin pass. I'm just going to check config -- list. And do I have it? Maybe I don't. That's good. Then I can do this for this lab. So what we're going to do is say yum install httpd, hit enter, say yes, that's okay, say yes, and we're good. We now have Apache. We have to start the service, but let me just see. Okay, yeah, let's just start the service. So service httpd start. There we go. Let's just clear that now. And it says create a simple web page on Yoda called hello.html. So what we're going to do is go into cd var html or www.html, and let's just create something in here. So vi hello.html, and you can put whatever you want, like Simon is awesome. Cool. All right, so it's not really an HTML document, but that's fine. It's still going to work. Once we've created that, it says test that HTTPD is up and running by fetching hello locally on Yoda. So we're just going to put this in right here. So I'll just clear this, and I'm going to say wget httpd / localhost / hello.html. And looks like everything was good. And let's just ls. So now I have two versions of it, and that's because I just downloaded in the same directory. So I'm just going to remove that one. .1. Yes. So there we go. So it did work, so that's good. We just completed these steps, so we can move on to this, where it says log on to Luke and try to download a hello.html from Yoda. So this is Vader. Let's go to Luke. Luke right here. So I'm just going to exit this because you see I'm still in Yoda. I want to make sure I am in Luke, and we'll just say Alice. I don't think it specifies who you have to log in as. So we're going to say wget http / Yoda / hello.html, enter, and it says failed, no route to host. Okay, so that means that's closed, and that's what we wanted. So that's not a problem at all. It's closed to outsiders, so that's perfect. So now what we're going to do is build a tunnel from Luke to Yoda. So we're going to log on to Luke, which we already have, and we're going to invoke SSH with -L. So let's do this. Let's sign in as root. And we're going to say SSH -L 8080 and :Yoda 80, and then -N Alice at Yoda. Hit enter, say yes, and permission denied. Oh, I have to actually do it as Alice because remember, root can't log in to Yoda anymore. So let's do it again. Let's exit, but this time we're going to do it as Alice. So user pass, and we're going to say the same thing. We're going to do SSH L 8080 Yoda 80 N, and then Alice at Yoda. enter passphrase. My passphrase was Simon. It's not user pass. Remember, it's the passphrase. Enter, and we'll wait. And then in another window, while we wait, we're going to basically run this and see if we can get it working. So this is where we're going to use PuTTY again. Let's say 10.1.1.11 because we want to go into Luke. Say yes. Log in as Alice. User pass. And now let's try to get that file. So wget httpd or http, sorry, // localhost, sorry, colon 8080 / hello.html, and then enter. And it looks like we got that file. If I hit ls, we have hello.html. So that worked. So we have now completed this. We built a tunnel. So what we have to do is prove that it was working. So what we're going to do is tear down the tunnel by typing in -c in the window where the tunnel's running. So this guy right here. So we're going to say, there we go. We just killed it. So let's see if we can download it again in PuTTY. So let's just remove that file. Okay, I'm going to clear this. Try it again. wget enter. Connection failed. So it's not working. Go back to the other screen. Just run it again. My passphrase is Simon. Now wait a couple seconds, and then what we'll do is get the PuTTY host again. Now that we've reestablished the tunnel, we'll just put it through again. There we go. It works. Cat hello. It's back. So we just completed this. So this is good. Everything is working there. And finally, to end the lab, we're going to do a couple more steps, which is use Luke as a gateway from your workstation to Yoda. So it says open port 8081 on Luke's firewall. Hint, log on to Luke and run setup or edit this file, which is the firewall file. And then we're going to build a tunnel from Luke to Yoda, and we're given that command. And then on our desktop web browser, we're going to basically go to this file. So let's go into Luke first, and we can kill this, clear this. And there's a couple ways that you can do this. What I'm going to do is just edit this file because there is a lab, which is lab 6, which you're going to be going into this file and you're going to be editing this, so you should probably get used to this, but you can use setup if you'd like. So what we're going to do is vi into etc sysconfig IP tables, and what we're going to do, I'm in Luke, right? Oh, you know what? I'm in Alice. I should be logging in as root. I apologize. Let's log in as root. There we go. And what you're going to do is add a new line, and I'll show you the line that it should look like. It's going to look like this line right here. It's going to look very similar to this line. So we're going to say -a input -m state --state new -m TCP -p TCP -d port, and we want to make sure that we're opening port 8081, so 8081 J accept, and go ahead, save that, and then restart it. So you're going to want to make sure you say service IP tables restart. Everything looks good there. So now we're going to build this tunnel. So let's go back into Alice, and let's build that tunnel. put in your passphrase. Mine is Simon. And then wait a couple seconds, and then on your actual browser, you're going to point your desktop to this. And there we go. Look, Simon is awesome. So if you followed me through the lab, you should have gone through everything, and everything should work out the way that it did in this video. So hopefully this really helped you. Once again, like I said, if you have any questions for me about the video, if you want me to clarify anything for you, by all means let me know. I know there's a couple times where I tried to do something as Alice and I should have done it as Rouge, or I tried to do something as Rude and I should have done it as Alice. So I can understand completely if there's anything that was confusing for you. So again, don't be afraid to let me know. Any way that I can help, I'd be happy to. If you have questions, once again, about anything where you're getting graded on, so this section right here where it's talking about the questions and how to answer them, or this section right here, you will have to speak to your teachers about that, but again, they're happy to help. So hopefully this video helped you out and clarified things, but if not, let me know, and good luck on your test. I will see you in video 2. Take it easy. Bye.